The alien marketplace buzzed with life, its energy vibrating in the air. Mark stood at the center, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He was the only human here, surrounded by beings from every corner of the galaxy, each one more extraordinary than the next. Tall, elegant, exotic, these aliens looked like they had stepped out of a science fiction novel, with their shimmering skin, glowing eyes, and features that defied logic. But what really caught his attention wasn't their appearance. It was the challenge. The alien leader, a towering blue-skinned being with 4 arms and a booming voice, stepped forward. He was clearly the one in charge, his eyes scanning the crowd before settling on Mark. The air around them seemed to grow thicker with anticipation. "Human," the alien said, his voice deep and commanding. "You've traveled across galaxies far from your home. We offer you a challenge, something your kind has never experienced. Choose any woman you want. We've brought forth our finest, each one a symbol of beauty, strength, and grace. Anyone you choose will be yours." Mark blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. Was this a joke? The crowd of aliens behind him chuckled, their gazes flicking between him and the line of women they had presented. He glanced at the line, which was made up of stunningly beautiful alien women, each more breathtaking than the last. There was one with golden, almost ethereal skin, her eyes a piercing shade of red, and another with silvery hair that seemed to shimmer under the artificial light of the marketplace. Each one was a perfect specimen, a living example of alien grace and beauty. Surely this was a trick. Who wouldn't choose one of them? But something inside him stirred as his gaze lingered on the very last figure in the line. She wasn't tall like the others, nor was she elegant or perfectly symmetrical. Her skin was a dull shade of green, her features sharp and uneven. One of her eyes was slightly larger than the other, and her lips were too thin. She looked out of place, standing there amongst the others. And yet when her eyes met his, something in him shifted. There was a vulnerability in her gaze, something raw and honest that none of the others seemed to have. For a moment he forgot the spectacle around him, the judgmental stares from the crowd and everything else. It was just her. Without thinking, Mark pointed toward her. "I choose her." The room fell silent. The alien leader raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. A few of the others snickered, and Mark could feel their mocking gazes on him. He could hear the whispers, some full of disbelief, others full of outright amusement. But none of that mattered. In that moment, it was only him and her. The alien leader cleared his throat. "Are you sure, human? You've seen our finest. She is different." Mark didn't even hesitate. "Yes, I'm sure." A mix of confusion and curiosity rippled through the crowd as they watched him. But the alien woman, Zara, he would later learn her name, stepped forward. Her posture was slightly hunched, as if she was used to being overlooked, used to being the one no one chose. The alien leader nodded, still looking bewildered, and motioned for Zara to approach him. "As you wish." Zara walked toward Mark slowly, her steps careful, as if she were unsure whether to trust this strange human who had chosen her. Mark smiled at her, trying to reassure her, but she didn't look up. When she finally stopped in front of him, she was just as he had seen her before, quiet, almost hesitant. "Hi," Mark said softly, trying to break the awkward silence. "I'm Mark. What's your name?" Zara looked up at him, her large, mismatched eyes meeting his. For a moment, neither of them said anything, but he could see something flicker in her expression, a mix of surprise, maybe even disbelief. She didn't seem used to someone talking to her like this. "Zara," she said quietly, her voice gentle but filled with a vulnerability that Mark didn't expect. "Zara," Mark repeated, testing the name on his tongue. It felt right somehow. "It's nice to meet you, Zara." She nodded, her lips barely twitching into something that resembled a smile. It wasn't much, but Mark could see the slightest glimmer of something, hope maybe, or at least the beginning of it. "Don't worry about them," Mark said, trying to lighten the mood. "I chose you because you looked interesting, different from the others." Zara's expression shifted just slightly, as if she didn't quite understand what he meant. "Different," she asked, her voice barely audible. "You don't think I'm ugly?" Mark's heart skipped a beat. "No," he said quickly, reaching out to gently lift her chin so she would look at him. "Not at all. You're beautiful, in your own way." Zara blinked, clearly taken aback by his words. She looked at him as if trying to figure out if he was joking or if he really meant it. But when she met his gaze, there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something that made him want to protect her, to make her believe in herself. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "No one has ever said that to me." Mark smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Well, I'm saying it now. You're beautiful, Zara." And for the first time since they met, Zara's eyes softened and she didn't look away. She didn't laugh or mock him. She just looked at him like maybe, just maybe, someone could see her for who she truly was. The days that followed felt like a strange dream. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed since he chose Zara. The whole galaxy seemed to have shifted its axis, pulling them together in ways he couldn't explain. There were still the occasional stares, the whispers, the laughter from other aliens, but none of that mattered anymore. Zara's presence was enough to make him forget everything else. The first time they sat together, alone, without the watchful eyes of the marketplace crowd, felt surreal. They found a quiet corner in the alien ship, away from the hustle and bustle. Mark had never expected this to happen. He had thought the selection would be some strange, one-time thing, but instead, he found himself wanting to know more about this woman who was so different from everyone else. Zara sat on the edge of the bench, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes were downcast, and she shifted nervously in her seat. Mark could tell she wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not in a situation like this. She seemed out of place, unsure, like she was waiting for something, maybe for him to change his mind. He sat beside her, giving her the space she needed, but close enough to show he wasn't going anywhere. "You okay?" he asked gently, glancing over at her. Zara didn't respond at first. She was quiet, the soft hum of the ship filling the silence between them. After a moment, she finally looked up at him, her mismatched eyes meeting his. There was a vulnerability in them that took Mark by surprise. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Why did you choose me? Out of all the others, why me?" Mark's heart softened at her words. He had been wondering the same thing himself. Why her? It wasn't that the other women weren't beautiful, they were. But something about Zara had drawn him in. There was something real about her, something raw that the others didn't have. He looked at her with sincerity, his voice steady. "I chose you because you're real, the others. They were perfect, sure, but I don't want perfect. I want someone who's different, someone who doesn't hide behind what others expect them to be. I want someone who isn't afraid to just be." Zara blinked as though processing his words. For a moment, there was silence again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that came when two people understood each other, even without saying much. "You think I'm real?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark smiled, his heart swelling. "I do, and I think you're amazing just the way you are." Zara's face softened, and for the first time a real smile tugged at her lips. It was small, but it was enough to make Mark feel like maybe, just maybe, he had made the right choice. "I never thought anyone would see me like that," she said, her voice still quiet, but now there was something hopeful in it. "I've always been invisible to everyone else." "You're not invisible to me," Mark said, his tone firm but gentle. "I see you, Zara, and I'm not going anywhere." Zara's eyes glistened for a moment as if holding back tears. She quickly wiped them away, almost embarrassed, but Mark could tell it wasn't out of shame. It was something else, something deeper. She wasn't used to kindness, and it was starting to overwhelm her. Mark reached out, his hand resting on hers. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to hide from me. Whatever you've been through, we can face it together." She looked at his hand for a moment before meeting his gaze again, her expression a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "You really mean that?" "I do," he replied without hesitation. I'm not here to play games, Zara. I'm here because I want to be here, with you. The words seemed to hang in the air, and for a second, neither of them moved. Zara's eyes softened, and Mark could feel a shift in her, like the walls she'd built around herself were starting to crack. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing me, for who I really am." Mark squeezed her hand gently, offering her a reassuring smile. "You don't need to thank me, you just need to believe it." As they sat there, hand in hand, Mark realized how much this simple moment meant. It wasn't about some grand romantic gesture or the alien beauty that everyone else had expected him to choose. It was about something deeper: understanding, acceptance, and connection. Zara had always believed she was invisible, unworthy of love or attention, but Mark was showing her something different. For the first time, Zara wasn't just seen for her appearance. She was seen for the person she was, someone who deserved love, kindness, and respect. As the ship's lights dimmed and the soft hum of the engines filled the space, Mark couldn't help but feel that he had found something he never expected. Zara might not have been the obvious choice, but she was the one that had called to him. And now that they were here together, he knew one thing for sure: the adventure they were about to embark on would be one for the ages. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "You're not invisible to me, Zara. You never will be." And for the first time, Zara smiled, truly smiled. As the days passed, Mark and Zara spent more time together. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of awkward silence, moments when Zara pulled back into herself, unsure of what to do or say. Mark couldn't blame her. After all, she'd spent so much of her life being overlooked, ridiculed, and ignored. But he could see it happening slowly, little by little. Zara was starting to open up, starting to believe in herself. And he was more than happy to be there to help her along the way. One afternoon, Mark found her sitting alone by a window, gazing out at the vastness of space. The stars stretched out before them, their twinkling light filling the room. Zara didn't look at him when he entered, but Mark noticed the way her shoulders slumped, like she was carrying the weight of something heavy. "Hey," he said softly, approaching her. He wasn't sure how to break the silence, but he knew he had to try. "You okay?" Zara didn't turn, but he could hear the sadness in her voice when she spoke. "I don't know, Mark, it's just, everything is so different now. You chose me. You really chose me, but I can't shake the feeling that it's all just temporary, that I'll mess it up somehow." Mark sat down beside her, close but not too close, respecting the space she still needed. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he let the quiet settle between them for a moment, both of them just looking out into the stars. "You won't mess it up," Mark finally said, his voice soft but sure. "Not with me. I chose you, Zara, and I don't back down from my choices. You're not a temporary thing. You're the real deal." Zara turned to him then, her eyes filled with a mix of skepticism and hope. "But why me? I'm different. I'm not like the others. You could have anyone in the galaxy, and you chose the one who's always been invisible." Mark gave her a gentle smile, his hand reaching out to rest on hers. The touch was simple, but it seemed to carry a world of meaning in it. "Maybe I like the fact that you're not like the others. The others are all perfect, yeah, but that's the problem. They're perfect in the way that's expected. But you, Zara, you're real, you're something different, and I like that, I like you." Zara's breath hitched slightly, and for a moment she looked like she was going to pull away. But then, as if realizing what he meant, she squeezed his hand, her eyes softening. "I don't know how to be this open," she said quietly. "I've spent so long hiding, keeping people at arm's length, but with you, it feels different. It's like I'm allowed to be myself, but it's scary." Mark nodded, understanding completely. He'd never been one to hide who he was. He was open and loud, but he knew that was because he didn't have to fight for his worth. Zara had fought for every ounce of self-esteem she had. She'd been fighting her whole life. "I get it," Mark said, "but you don't have to hide with me. I want to know the real you, and I'm not going anywhere." Zara's eyes searched his face, and for the first time she seemed to let her guard down a little more. A small, hesitant smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "I'm starting to believe that you won't leave." Mark chuckled softly. "Well, you'll have to put up with me for a while because I'm sticking around." The room was filled with a comfortable silence then, both of them just sitting together, hand in hand, watching the stars outside. For Mark, it felt like something was shifting between them, something that had always been there but was now finally starting to grow. He could see the walls Zara had built around herself slowly crumbling, piece by piece. "I've never really believed in the idea of fate," Zara said suddenly, breaking the silence. "But maybe this is it. Maybe we were meant to meet, to be together." Mark looked at her, his heart beating faster. "I don't know if it's fate," he said, his voice quieter now, "but I do know this: I'm glad we met. And I'm glad you're here with me. That's enough for me." Zara smiled more openly now, her eyes shining with something Mark couldn't quite name. Hope maybe, or trust, or something even deeper. Whatever it was, it made his chest tighten in the best possible way. Before Mark could say anything more, Zara leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but one that made Mark's heart swell. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her in close. They didn't need words now. The silence felt peaceful, warm. "I'm glad you're here too," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. Mark smiled, pressing a soft kiss to the top of her head. He didn't need to say anything else. He knew this was just the beginning of something real, something lasting. Whatever challenges came their way, they would face them together. He was no longer worried about Zara. He was worried about how he could make her see just how important she was to him. And as the stars flickered outside the window, Mark knew they had already made something beautiful together. The adventure was just beginning, and he couldn't wait to see where it would take them. The days after the gathering in the main hall had felt like a turning point for both Zara and Mark. The whispers and side glances had not disappeared entirely, but they had shifted. There was no longer a mocking tone when the other aliens looked at Zara. Instead, there was something different: respect. She had stood up in front of them all, faced the judgment head-on, and in doing so, had proven that she belonged just as much as anyone else. It wasn't easy, though. Zara still had moments of doubt, moments when she questioned whether she was truly accepted or if the respect was just a fleeting thing. But Mark was there every step of the way. He never let her pull away. He never let her think she was anything less than amazing. One evening, as they sat together in the ship's observation deck, watching the stars streak by, Zara spoke for the first time about the things that had haunted her for so long. She had been silent all night, her eyes lost in the stars, before Mark gently nudged her. "Zara," he said softly, "what's on your mind?" She hesitated before speaking, her voice quiet but full of weight. "I keep wondering, why me? Why did you choose me? Everyone said I was different, not just different in the way that was interesting, but different in the way that was wrong. I never understood why I didn't fit in. And now that I'm starting to feel accepted, I'm scared it'll all fall apart." Mark turned to her, his heart aching at her words. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, making sure she knew he was there. "Zara, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You never did. You're not here because you had to be someone else. You're here because you're you, and that's enough. You're amazing. And I chose you because of that, not despite it." She looked at him then, her eyes softening. "I didn't think anyone would ever look at me like that," she whispered, her voice trembling. Mark smiled, taking her hand in his. "That's because they couldn't see what I see. They looked at you and saw someone they didn't understand. I looked at you and saw someone worth knowing, worth being with." Zara's eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I don't know how to thank you, Mark. I never thought I'd be here in this place, in this life. You make me feel whole, like I'm not just some shadow anymore, like I matter." "You matter," Mark said firmly, leaning in closer. "You always have." The words hung in the air, a soft promise, as Zara smiled through her tears. In that moment, it felt like the whole universe had quieted down, leaving just the two of them. The stars outside, the hum of the ship, it all seemed distant compared to the connection they shared. The next few days were filled with small victories. Zara's confidence grew bit by bit. She smiled more, laughed more, and even stood up to a few of the other aliens who had once ridiculed her. The change wasn't instant, but Mark could see it in the way she walked now, in the way she held herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. One afternoon, they found themselves walking through the ship's garden, a peaceful space full of alien plants and flowers that glowed in the soft light of the setting sun. Zara was quieter than usual, but there was a contentedness to her as she stopped to smell a flower that reminded her of Earth's wildflowers. Mark watched her, a smile tugging at his lips. "You look happy." Zara turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a softness that warmed him from the inside out. "I am. I didn't think I could be happy like this, but I am, with you." Mark reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Good, because I don't ever want you to feel alone again. You're my everything, Zara. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She squeezed his hand, the weight of his words sinking in. "And you're mine, Mark. I've never met anyone like you. You made me believe that I could be more than just the person I was before. You made me believe in myself." They stopped walking and turned to face each other, the soft glow of the garden reflecting in their eyes. Mark's heart beat faster as he took a step closer to her, their faces only inches apart now. He had wanted to say it for so long, but he wanted to make sure it was right, that it came from the deepest part of his heart. "I love you, Zara," Mark whispered, his voice full of emotion. Zara's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened, as though the words had hit her in the most unexpected way. But then she smiled, the kind of smile that lit up her entire face, the smile that Mark had seen before, but now it was brighter, more real. "I love you too, Mark," she said, her voice soft but sure. And in that moment, under the alien stars and in the quiet beauty of the garden, Mark knew something for certain. This was no longer just an adventure. It was a journey that neither of them could have predicted, but one they were meant to take together. And as long as they had each other, they could face anything the universe threw their way. The future was wide open, and for the first time it didn't seem so uncertain. Because with Zara by his side, Mark knew that whatever came next, they were stronger together. And that was all that mattered.